there's a lot of projects that can come along that you wonder on the likes of something that varies in the production and outcome when you may not even know what to expect from said developing project, and then this can be determined on its appeal from the first bit of footage or concept that it presented to you that can get you invested. Stuff like the case like the Lego movie that sounded like it was possibly doomed as a possible giant 90-minute commercial that turned into something that was a lot of humor, heart, and something that proved you could make anything from a massive product IP, to the likes of musicals like Wicked or Dear Evan Hansen that has its fans and many wanting the adaptation for a long time, and it turns out the realm of success like Wicked Part 1 was, or disaster like Evan Hansen was, or even the likes of Into the Spider-Verse, a project that has another take on the friendly neighborhood wall crawler that could be just a simple animated project and then start doing the cool thing of focusing on another Spider-Man besides Peter Parker with Miles Morales, get the guys that made the Lego movie and other big projects like Chance and Meatballs and let them show creative genius and then put it into an animation style that has now defined a new wave of animation that some studios and filmmakers have embraced, which is what the focus of the film in question we are talking about today is on, as you're heading to the realm of the company that, besides Sony Animation, have been trying their hand with the array of success in terms wise of its different animation styles, and as of course with the more rebellious younger brother of the Disney franchise with Dreamworks Animations. Now, the studio has had its fair share of films from 2024, in particular, with one or two of them I may give my thoughts on with it down the line, with a total of four movies that have come out alone this year, with a film on Netflix that is often overlooked but has been very well received, a long-awaited sequel for an underrated film from 2010 that many want to consider non-canon, a fourth movie in a series that feels like is missing some elements, but I'll get to that review eventually, and then the focus of today's film, which is an adaptation of a series of books by Peter Brown about a robot that finds itself marooned on an island and learns to adapt and call it their home, and that is the focus of today's review and the second part of the duology of films about robots on The Wild Robot. From the moment the first trailer released for this, it had gripped me from the striking animation and lack of dialogue and moved me in ways that made me feel emotions. I was invested and intrigued to hear more on it as the marketing and release grew closer to where we are today, and where I will be answering the question of if this film has found a way to adapt or if the programmed format is too damaged beyond repair. Well, if it's a case where I was sobbing uncontrollably for the second half of this film is indication, I'm happy to say this film is an absolute beautiful film, and like a certain anime film from this year about emotions, was a film that made me emotional by the film's end. Sure, it has a very slim amount of issues, but can be easily overlooked for a film that I would rank as one of the best of 2024, and I will give my thoughts on the whole project here.
Just like pure sobbing for the last like half that movie. Oh. But yeah, I think honestly you should go see Wild Robot.
A Rosm always completes its task.
So of course we're going to start where all these reviews begin, and the basis to really get a focus of insight into what many will experience, besides the visual look of the project, is how the story will come about. And this has the added benefit of being based on a series of books that would be the foundation for a project, but built on the aesthetic and visuals of the project to really give it its own identity. It's a case of there being many different adaptations of books and novels in the past, and this one takes the approach of the first novel story with as such a focus of its plot. Shipwrecked on a deserted island, a robot named Roz must learn to adapt to its new surroundings. Building relationships with the native animals, Roz soon develops a parental bond with an orphan gosling and soon adapts and learns to become a protector for this island when a dangerous threat tries to destroy it. So in most cases about the narrative at face value, it sounds like a standard by the numbers plot of a bit of a fish out of water type scenario with this being a robot in a land that is not accustomed to its surroundings and has to learn to adapt, and while there is a bit of the narrative present, there is a lot more to it as to provide a tale about found families and accepting one's flaws as something to be grateful for and learn to appreciate what can come from these new surroundings and discoveries about others and about oneself, which I think is a beautiful piece. That also can be a fair bit dark in its visual storytelling than I expected it to be as well. Sure, it's not all perfect, as I can give a case that the first few minutes go by just a little bit too quick, then it was a worry that it may be something of a film that will breeze by without giving us much time to slow down and take it all in. But thankfully, it does pull on the brakes after a few minutes to get more up to speed for some characters, and the only other element that feels a bit messy or needed much is a final battle that the likes of the film needing a physical villain was a bit so-so, but I guess it gets to set up a continuation of the story. It didn't take away from the important messaging overall anyway, and the heart was still there that was put into the film's narrative, and after all that, I think for a story, it wears it proudly for all to see. So in regards on this story-wise, I'm going to give it, even a simplistic plot, an 8.5 out of 9.
And I
am a wild robot.
So in most cases, there is a fair bit that's often seen with a lot of these movies, that they provide quite the array of characters to talk about. And while in the case there is some the focus of select few, in this one, it's not as many as a few other ones that I've done already in the past, with some not having as much of a presence compared to other characters in this, but I will give at least my thoughts on all of them that at least I can provide, and some I'll give a focus on much more, and some not as much, but we'll delve onto these characters we will grow attached to over this film's runtime. So I feel, of course, it's best to start with the titular character of the film, and the one that we as a viewer will follow the journey alongside with from the very beginning, and this of course with the character of Roz, played by Lupita Nyong'o. So in most regards of stories of this concept of the fish out of water narrative, we expect the case of most other forms to adapt and overcome the situation that they are in, learn to adapt to the surroundings they find themselves in, learn some things along the way. And while it may be the case that some human emotions and ideals are easy for human characters or other distinct characters that may be close to the animals on the island, it makes it a little more of a new concept when the main lead is a robot, because it's much more of a difficult challenge to try and prove occasions about robots finding human emotions, especially the common aspect of emotion of love. However, it is always an intriguing way to see how some will define their programming and cold exterior and learn to experience many new things, like become their own person against their own coding suggests, and learn to experience new emotions like love from the animals that they will interact with. I also have to give praise to Lupita Nyong'o for her performance, as in the case it could have just been phoned in with a normal voice or attempt at a robot voice, but she goes a fair bit beyond in giving a range of voice and tonal forms as the story goes on to convey many forms of emotion that would be new for this machine in a new environment. And I love to see more of this development to this character as the story progresses with more stories and sequels. As I grew attached to this character, and she did provide many emotions to me, and I expected to help really sell that getting the title character done right, because they did get it right, and it was an important thing is the aspect of getting the titular character or the main lead done, because if you get main lead done and everything else is bad, I feel like you can counter with it's sort of a counterbalance and stuff, but I think I'm satisfied with the service they provide with these characters. So we'll talk then on the character that's often from a perspective in the ways that you look at them, that they would be seen as a sly, cunning figure that would work itself to get his way. But no, from the likes of how it comes about is that there's more of a tragic tale hidden behind that exterior. This of course presented in the character of the fox that's known as Fink, who in this is voiced by Pedro Pascal. When we are first introduced to this character, we get the ideal of the normal traits for a fox of conniving, sarcastic, and a little bit aggressive and sly, like the basis of a fox would be known for if threatened or defending their lives and loved ones. But there is a much deeper layered character to this fox that we would use his tactics to get his way. It also has a feeling of someone who puts it on because they feel alone and are afraid to attach themselves to someone because they would fear they would hurt them more than if they never created a close bond to it. I love the approach they went with this character that hasn't become a form of a parental figure to the young Gosling, and the collective bond of friendship he would grow to have with the mechanical helper that is seen as a monster and a threat to many of the animals at first glance, that over time will learn to open up more but still have a little sarcastic tone to it. I love how they manage him that keeps who he is at face value, and then also have a more respectful and softer side that shines through as the story progresses, and loving that development just overall. And I do hope we see more of this adorable little fox in the future, because they have so much to give and so much to develop with. I just love them. Now on the character I feel has the biggest focus in providing the heart and a good amount of the emotions we're coming from is the focus of the parental bond that came from Roz and the little Gosling that would come to be known as Brightbill. We see this journey from the beginning of its life and slowly build that journey from coming from a broken home, quite literally, and learning a lot more with being a bigger challenge of someone that is a lot different than they would expect, and also being the runt of the litter and an outcast to some other creatures of its kind. But what they find from their differences in a person helps to make them feel special, that many people like myself would feel like they would not always belong or may look the same as others but be seen as different. And when the likes of some that would hurt you or make you feel small or different, it's the ones that finds oneself and embrace what makes you that much more important and can help find oneself. And the case of them learning about where they came from and having a difficult time of fitting in felt well respected and genuine, that seeing this development of learning to accept oneself and be who they are and where they came from is a beautiful piece presented here, especially with the family bond that becomes built between Brightbill and Roz as the story progresses, that when they separate in a beautiful scene of the migration moments in this film was the moment where I'm sitting in a cinema beginning to well up with emotion, and where I love that development and bond they created for these characters. I love to see this bond grow more as more stories are told from this little Gosling and the found family he became a part of, because it's beautiful. Now, the last of the characters I can at least give a little bit of a focus in terms of discussion, as there is a bit to talk on. We can have on another character is with another flying animal that has a bit of presence, and this is the focus of an old wise bird known as Longneck. So we get introduced to this character when we see the basis of the 3-step plan that Roz has been told to provide for the small little gosling, of feeding, making it learn to swim, and then the focus of it learning to fly to go with his kind when migrating for winter it comes around. And when it's a case of other birds or animals, we'll see Brightbill as a freak or see him as a lost cause, basically as like a freak that like lives with the monster of the robot. This wise bird appears and sees that while others may lose hope on him, he can see that he would become the best of all of them. And I appreciate that there's one that will go against and tear people down. Some will go against the noise and support when things are possible. In most cases, the character does not have much of a big screen presence in the film, but for the amount of time that they give to them and the motivation used of his character, it may come off a bit preachy to some, but I think they use him well enough in this film, and hopefully learn more about him over time, but they use him well and help make this little gosling soar. So in the last of the focus of the characters will consist of 2 different focus elements, which one is more of a bigger group, another is a late addition character that I will be giving my thoughts on in a bit more of a brief description here. So first we'll talk on the bigger group of characters, and that is mainly the likes of the animals of the deserted island that we will cross paths or become acquainted with as this film goes on. Now, it is a case that we do not know much on a lot of them besides select few, which include a mother possum named Pinktail, that's voiced by Catherine O'Hara and her children, a stubborn beaver named Paddler, voiced by Matt Berry, that is trying to chomp down the biggest tree on the island, Thunderbolt, voiced by Ving Rhames, a peregrine falcon that also helps with Brightbill taking flight, and Thorn, voiced by Mark Hamill, the big grizzly bear of the woods, is more of a danger than an ally for the first half anyways. Now, each of them have their own unique form in helping the narrative that they have their use in some ways, and while it's a case that they are not the biggest of use of characters in this movie, each of them bring when the moment comes for the narrative or in development is done decently well, and I'm sure with more stories to tell of Roz and these animals and on this island and stuff, that a few of them can definitely get more of a presence and give a lot more of the stories and what they will tackle. And the last focus of characters is one that I feel if you took it out would still have worked, but I get of needing some form of a negative force that goes against the new status quo, and that is with the character known as Ventre, which is short for Virtual Observational Neutralizing Troublesome Retrieval Authority, and is voiced by Stephanie Hsu, who, as I mentioned, is introduced very late into the film and somewhat seen as a placement for an antagonist in the project that helps set up some dire stakes for the main character and for in some sense builds the use for a big final confrontation in the back half of the 3rd act. Now, in all fairness, I can understand why it would be used in this film, and I'm sure if the tracker that Roz sent out happened near the beginning of the film, that they would have been more of a presence, or a bit like Terry from Pixar's Soul, that would go all the way to make sure the count or things are right, but if only brought in near the end, and like the presence just feels a little unnecessary in that form. I'm sure in the case that they would set them up to appear in a follow-up film and be more of a possible threat and more of a presence, but there is a sense of potential with a villain for the film, but just need to have more of a presence to really sell it to me. It just kind of case feels like they kind of tacked them on a little bit. I understand like kind of there's a sense of a messaging to it and stuff, but I feel they needed a bit more presence. But overall, in terms of characters for this project, I can say that the film does well with making them feel layered, have some appealing motivations and aspirations, and help them learn more and become more than they are, and also when they were programmed to be, and how it went about with most of it was very strong. Sure, some would need a little more presence or build up to get the real concern and fear to the narrative, but I'm sure with a few of them will develop more as the series goes on and build and continue such strong characters for some future stories. So in this regards, even with some small issues, I'm giving characters a 9 to a 9.5. Now, let us talk on the element that helped to really appeal to me from face value in the first piece of footage that I saw, and that is of course in the way of presentation to the film. And if I was anything else to describe it than visually stunning, then I do not know what I can describe it as, because it is a wonderful visual aesthetic and looks the whole project that helps to set it apart from other projects from the studio and even from other films from said project that have taken the approach of something unique and different. Where the likes of Puss in Boots' Last Wish goes for the likes of an illustration of a fairy tale, a children's book, the Bad Guys goes for one more of a fluid, fast-paced like Saturday morning cartoon, the approach on this one is more akin to the likes of a hand-painted look with its aesthetic and style that help to contrast with design and geometrical 3D forms of the characters of the story. And I think the look helps to feel close to the illustrations of the book covers and give something some colourful and wondrous, as it's often seen that art and paintings can often tell a story from the approach and ways an artist would create their piece to a canvas, a page, or a screen. And even some that may be often just still life, to the creative eye can see so much in motion and how they presented the different elements or the blend of the creatures, big and small, or the environmental elements from the lush green grass to the great tall trees, from the waters of the surrounding oceans to the changing clouds and weather in the sky, help to appeal and provide so much variety, provide so many nights, so many feelings and moods. Where the likes of the sunny skies provide a sense of warmth and comfort, the stormy nights provide fear and want to have you find shelter and to keep warm, and the levels of heavy snow of the winter provide worry that many would not last through the nights, but through compassion and connection, they find a way to survive, and how they go about it is a beautiful array of visuals and aesthetic, and I must applaud the animators and creatives involved that really went all in on showing some wondrous visuals. And in the case of like films with like Spider-Verse and Puss in Boots, there are so many shots that I would love to just freeze frame on, take those shots and have them hanging all over my wall or in my house and stuff in that regards, because it's a beautiful visual sight to behold. It also goes a bit dark with some of its visuals, which is something I didn't expect in all regards, because like it's kind of seen as a G or PG movie, and there's some dark visuals in this, like really kind of fucked up shit on all regards, but you know, some sort of messed up visuals, and don't take away from the beauty that appeal with something showing the horrors of the world too, but it's something I didn't expect. As on the basis of the other element comes the likes of the faithfulness in the adaptation, as well as the likes of pacing and the runtime, where the latter of which is on a top form with how it is presented, with the only hiccup of pacing coming from the opening few minutes, as so much goes on that is a worry that it was going to be a constant speed through to get from beginning to end. Thankfully, it does slow down to find a perfect pace of tone in how the film goes along, and really feels it tells its story with a good length in runtime overall, which is often a fair bit of time feel it could be longer or works better being shorter, but there is a valid few that find the right balance in length, and this is one of them. And as the likes of its faithfulness to its adaptation, while I have not read the book myself, I may pick up the trilogy at some point in the future, because there's 3 books at the moment, I've heard the likes of it is a respectful and well-made adaptation from book to screen that has just a few issues and missing elements from some that I've read it to compare, but if it's only a small few issues that are missing and really gives a respect to its original narrative, that a few exceptions is perfectly fine. If it's a case where a book is butchered, that's when the issue comes along, because sometimes you can get every detail, some can miss a few, and others can skip so much stuff and make a whole mess of things. But hopefully, if it goes into the stories of the sequels, that I hope they have read them and see if they will give as much love its adaptation as they did with this one, because I think honestly, if this book is anything like this film, I'm in for a nice surprise. So in all regards anyway, presentation, I can't give it lower than a 10. I'm just giving it a case of 10. It's a beautiful piece, enough said.
Sometimes, to survive, we must become more than we were programmed to be.
So on this section is one that I will be keeping brief in the most case. I do not have too much to really talk on with this section of the film, and that has to do with the writing and the dialogue. And it's easy to say that it is a well written and decently written piece of film. It's often the case when it comes to the likes of other films from this studio that's often seen of the overabundance of the lowbrow humor and, you know, the dialogue that has some focus, but may not take itself overly seriously. I can get to that degree of feeling a bit repetitive that will become what they are associated with. But there's a few times where you can have that dialogue and humor, but it is more reduced in the wider form and taken more serious. A staple seen with the likes of the recent Puss in Boots movie from the studio of having that fine balance of goofy at the beginning, but then going serious and quite dark in some regards. This one would have a similar tone in this serious and balanced nature that has a little bit of a tone and goofy nature as well, where it's seen at first of the oblivious nature of Roz as she is first finding herself on the island, and clear as to who is the person she is to serve as their recently purchased helper bot, but becomes more serious and focused in tone that has a bit of a goofy nature here and there, and the more humorous tone of the film would come more from some of the animal characters in the film. They will also get a bit of a serious and more focused tone, but not just a focus to some sass. If there is a case of any issue I would feel would be something I expect to have seen from this would be a focus on likes of a deeper message that while the theme of found family and learning to find oneself is there, I expected a little more on the likes of some bits of focus about the themes of how technology affects the climate of the environment, or the environment kind of thing. That is seen as a threat to the world and for ours, but I get it was a case of just wanting to focus on the more important story beats with the concept being seen in the more visual form that in some sense feels a little tacked on with the villain that is pushed into it as well, that a little on the likes of learning or protecting it in some form of dialogue at that point would have been nice, but I think from the way they show that this form of tech can learn to protect it instead of destroying it, but I feel it may be more focused that could be brought up in a little more in a follow-up story. I believe the third one is a lot more in this regard, so anyway. However, even with the lack of focus on the obvious narrative, the dialogue of serious and a bit of lightheartedness and themes presented are not diminished in any way, and appeal in that form too that you think could be by the numbers, but how they go about it is masterfully done. So in regards to the dialogue, I'm giving this an 8.5 to a 9. I think it's just really well done. Some bits of the extra messaging that you'd expect to be in it is not really overly pushed, but would have been nice to it, but I think it's still done well.
Right in the eye, say you'll see them another time.
Now, okay, similar to the previous section, this one is also not going to be overly as long, as we are talking about the other element of the technical side of things, and that is with the sweeping scores of the music that is present in the film. And I have to say, the case that is a beautiful piece of a score for a movie in this, and some of the original songs in the movie are as well. I have to give props to the film's composer of Chris Bowers, with really making something wondrous with his first fully animated film, as he has done some films of animation before, but not a full one to this extent. And it really shows he knows what he's getting into with this soundtrack that gives that sense of bewilderment, wonder, and discovery of seeing the island for the first time, as well as some of the wonders we will find across the vast terrain that give some great balance and moments from wonders of discovery, the sense of threat and arising action moments when danger comes looming, and moments of melancholy emotion when it's time to say goodbye for a time, and it balances the focus and used beautifully in how it comes about in the score. It's quite a feat, enough for it to achieve some award recognition for it as well for its appeal, because it's a beautiful soundtrack. It also case there was not just a lovely score, but the film also boasts a pair of original songs from the film by musician Maren Morris, with the songs of Kiss the Sky, Even When I'm Not, and they are some wonderful tracks to help to best describe the moments that they are used, with Kiss the Sky working great in the montage of Ellen Bright built to defy all odds and learn to spread his wings and soar high above the sky, and just works with it so well, and they are some wonderful tracks in general, and hope for some more praising for that too. Now, it was a case as well I would hope for maybe another original song or two in there as well, and truth be told, initially for a bit of time I thought that song Birds of a Feather from Billie Eilish was also part of the soundtrack, but I was proven to be mistaken in that regards. But I think for what it's worth, it's a perfectly accustomed to the production, the fine balance of the score overall, and it's not overly pushing the case about, you know, just this licensed track stuff that just really feels weird. So in all regards to things, I know I can give a case about one original song or two, but I was going to this case a 9.5 or 10. It's just that kind of a case. It's a beautiful soundtrack.
You are defective.
Now, of course, like the basis with all of my reviews I give, I can say a lot of time there is some issues I may have with the film, and even when I see some as like a perfect 10 out of 10 project, there is always a case of some minor nitpicks that will bring it down just that little bit, but in most cases will be overlooked in a normal day viewing of it. In most regards, it's just a few minor picks I would have to just throw in here just to kind of at least case that they're little kind of personal ones that most times I can, you know, give or take on a different day when I'm watching it, but these are just, I just want to list some of them that I kind of got from watching this. So in regards, starting with story. This one connects a little in the likes with presentation of some small pacing issues in the beginning about the likes of some of it going by just a little bit too quick, that some worry it was going to be that little bit too fast to really appreciate the film. But thankfully, they do slow it down quick enough to give it the appreciation that it deserved, and the only other issue was the likes of it was just the villain to be brought in so late in the film when most of the movie it didn't really need one. I could have saved the villain for like a sequel or something, but I get to have some conflict and a bit of a message and tone to their film in general, but they are some small issues that they can resolve in a quick and reasonable manner overall. Then the basis with characters, this is also just a small instance that I already alluded to, but most like some characters being a little unnecessary or more of a build up to be reasonably used for said project film. And this mainly comes to the villain that is added in near the end of the movie that I felt if given more of a presence earlier in the movie or saved to the eventual sequel, it may have worked better, as the one in this can be a little mixed on how it's presented. They show up, they cause a bit of conflict, they're kind of taken out quick enough, and I feel the case, did it really need it? But with other characters not having much of a presence either, it helps more of an interacting with the main characters of the story, and will be something I can see getting more development in future for some of these characters in regards. So hopefully a case instance that even a proper case with this villain can come back and do some proper good. And then the last one of focus in this section I have is with the likes of the small issue with writing, and that's the case of some message that could have been added or given a little extra development to. This is in the base of the writing stuff, and the likes of the environmental message to add to the story to give it a bit more of a concept that would be expected a little with a story of a robot lost in the wilderness and learning to adapt, to the whole likes of how tech can destroy something that was around for a very long time. I wonder likes of maybe a little to the backstory of the company that Roz is manufactured from, and there's some nefarious means behind it, but I'm sure they will add more of this onto the themes in like later films. As I mentioned, the books lean more into these themes as well. But I think if one concept theme messaging was expected and we get another that is done really well, then I feel it can be justified in this method approach. So I can give it a pass on that extent for the time being. But if not given a proper one in the future story, it may feel a bit repetitive, and hopefully they don't go down that route and they actually give some proper good theming and messaging in all the films. But these are just some small nitpicks I have of the film. In the case on most days, it would stick out to me in some regards, and in other days I let them slide in regards. But I feel it best to move on, decide for yourself. Let's bring this diagnosis of review to a conclusion.
How would you rate my performance?
So to wrap this all up in a nice little bow of satisfied services, The Wild Robot had all the bases that could have been your simple animated film for kids and families, but has gone above and beyond and proved itself that animated films can be a whole lot more, with one of the most beautiful, emotional, and heartwarming films of the year. And if I could be so bold to say, it's part of the top 3 films that really appealed to me from 2024. The other 2 that would be an interchangeable in top 3 is the film on, the sequel to Of Emotions with Inside 2, and a prequel to One Badass Warrior of the Wastelands, and part of the wide array of some of the other year's best films that I have, that they can vary in nations on like what I was best of the year. With its beautiful story, its gorgeous animation, its wonderful themes and messaging at its heart, and the soul of it too, and it bring it all together to make something truly wonderful. I mean, if it's a film that had made me crying in the middle of the cinema screen for about half the runtime in its beauty, then how am I not sure what other high praise I can give it? And I would highly recommend this film to any of you that may not have seen it, to be lost in its visuals or want something of a feel-good film that can feel like a bit like a warm hug, like one that you always love and feel safe and comfort from when you get it from that specific person. Or like some other titles from this year that feels so much like that. And I, for one, am very excited to see where the story goes from here, with the sequel on the way. I hope it's on the level of heart as this. So, with the final scores for this film. So, in the case instance of story, we're giving an 8.5 to a 9. Characters, a 9 to a 9.5. Presentation, a 10. Writing an 8.5 to a 9, and music a 9.5 to a 10. So giving a total score out of 50, a 45.5 to a 47.5 out of 50, or total score of 91 to 95%. So well done, Dreamworks, you made a beautiful film. So with all of that, this brings it to the end of another review for another film I wanted to talk about and give praise on, and probably the last of the reviews for 2024, because as of things are recording right now, and I hope you enjoyed reading my thoughts and opinions on these over the last year, of some from the past and some more recent. I know I can be a bit of a delay with some of these reviews and I can ramble on a fair bit, but it's just more a case of just how I go about with giving my thoughts of things, and I want to make them entertaining and give as much thought and focus as I can, because sometimes reviews, they could vary in variations where they'll focus on a section but not really delve too much on the stuff, and you feel like, is that all? So I appreciate the love that goes into reviews that you watch anyway, and I respect just even all the viewership numbers on them regards, and I hope to have more in the next year. But in all that regards anyway, I would love to know your thoughts on this film in particular if you have seen this movie. I'd love to know if you loved it, did you hate it, were you surprised by it, were you disappointed by it, or were you a bit indifferent about the whole thing? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I will love to hear all about it here too. As always, a case instance, I shall leave it as such, and I hope you all enjoy staying being wonderful people. Have a great day every day. And also, in case actually I want to bring this up as well, I like to thank you for make me reach my goal of 100 subs by 2025. I appreciate every single one of you for getting me there for the goal. And I may not be the most entertaining of people, and I may not be the biggest of names or most flattering of people to look at for half an hour, but I appreciate those that give the time out to watch me, and I hope to see more of you in the future. But with all that, I'm gonna leave it there. So thank you all for watching, and as always, you all stay being wonderful people. Have a great day every day, doing many great things. Happy New Year, and shall see you all in the next year for more reviews from me. So take care, and I'll see you later.